Chapter 7 of The Adventures of Pinocchio. Cat and Fox and Marionette walked and walked and walked. At last, toward evening, dead tired, they came to the Inn of the Red Lobster.
"Let us stop here a while," said the fox, "to eat a bite and rest for a few hours. At midnight we'll start out again, for at dawn tomorrow we must be at the Field of Wonders."
They went into the inn and all three sat down at the same table. However, not one of them was very hungry. The poor cat felt very weak, and he was able to eat only 35 mullets with tomato sauce and 4 portions of tripe with cheese. Moreover, as he was so in need of strength, he had to have 4 more helpings of butter and cheese. The fox, after a great deal of coaxing, tried his best to eat a little. The doctor had put him on a diet, and he had to be satisfied with a small hare dressed with a dozen young and tender spring chickens. After the hare, he ordered some partridges, a few pheasants, a couple of rabbits, and a dozen frogs and lizards. That was all. He felt ill, he said, and could not eat another bite. Pinocchio ate least of all. He asked for a bite of bread and a few nuts, and then hardly touched them. The poor fellow, with his mind on the Field of Wonders, was suffering from a gold piece indigestion. Supper over, the fox said to the innkeeper,
"Give us 2 good rooms, one for Mr. Pinocchio and the other for me and my friend. Before starting out, we'll take a little nap. Remember to call us at midnight sharp, for we must continue on our journey."
"Yes, sir," answered the innkeeper, winking in a knowing way at the fox and the cat, as if to say, "I understand." As soon as Pinocchio was in bed, he fell fast asleep and began to dream. He dreamed he was in the middle of a field. The field was full of vines heavy with grapes. The grapes were no other than gold coins which tinkled merrily as they swayed in the wind. They seemed to say, "Let him who wants us take us." Just as Pinocchio stretched out his hand to take a handful of them, he was awakened by 3 loud knocks at the door. It was the innkeeper who had come to tell him that midnight had struck. "Are my friends ready?" the marionette asked him.
"Indeed, yes. They went 2 hours ago."
"Why in such a hurry?"
"Unfortunately, the cat received a telegram which said that his firstborn was suffering from chilblains and was on the point of death. He could not even wait to say goodbye to you."
"Did they pay for the supper?"
"How could they do such a thing? Being people of great refinement, they did not want to offend you so deeply as not to allow you the honor of paying the bill."
"Too bad. That offense would have been more than pleasing to me," said Pinocchio, scratching his head. "Where did my good friends say they would wait for me?" he added.
"At the Field of Wonders at sunrise tomorrow morning."
Pinocchio paid a gold piece for the 3 suppers and started on his way toward the field that was to make him a rich man. He walked on, not knowing where he was going, for it was dark, so dark that not a thing was visible. Round about him, not a leaf stirred. A few bats skimmed his nose now and again and scared him half to death. Once or twice he shouted, "Who goes there?" And the faraway hills echoed back to him, "Who goes there? Who goes there? Who goes?" As he walked, Pinocchio noticed a tiny insect glimmering on the trunk of a tree, a small being that glowed with a pale, soft light. "Who are you?" he asked.
"I am the ghost of the talking cricket,"
answered the little being in a faint voice that sounded as if it came from a faraway world. "What do you want?" asked the marionette.
"I want to give you a few words of good advice. Return home and give the 4 gold pieces you have left to your poor old father, who is weeping because he has not seen you for many a day.
Tomorrow my father will be a rich man, for these 4 gold pieces will become 2,000.
Don't listen to those who promise you wealth overnight, my boy. As a rule, they are either fools or swindlers. Listen to me and go home.
But I want to go on.
The hour is late.
I want to go on.
The night is very dark.
I want to go on.
The road is dangerous.
I want to go on.
Remember that boys who insist on having their own way sooner or later come to grief.
The same nonsense. Goodbye, Cricket.
Good night, Pinocchio, and may heaven preserve you from the assassins.
There was silence for a minute, and the light of the talking cricket disappeared suddenly, just as if someone had snuffed it out. Once again, the road was plunged in darkness.
Dear, oh dear, when I come to think of it,
said the marionette to himself as he once more set out on his journey,
we boys are really very unlucky. Everybody scolds us, everybody gives us advice, everybody warns us. If we were to allow it, everyone would try to be father and mother to us. Everyone, even the talking cricket. Take me, for example. Just because I would not listen to that bothersome cricket, who knows how many misfortunes may be awaiting me? Assassins indeed! At least I have never believed in them, nor ever will. To speak sensibly, I think assassins have been invented by fathers and mothers to frighten children who want to run away at night. And then, even if I were to meet them on the road, what matter? I'll just run up to them and say, "Well, signori, what do you want? Remember that you can't fool with me. Run along and mind your business." At such a speech, I can almost see those poor fellows running like the wind. But in case they don't run away, I can always run myself.
Pinocchio was not given time to argue any longer, for he thought he heard a slight rustle among the leaves behind him. He turned to look, and behold, there in the darkness stood 2 big black shadows, wrapped from head to foot in black sacks. The 2 figures leaped toward him as softly as if they were ghosts.
"Here they come,"
Pinocchio said to himself, and not knowing where to hide the gold pieces, he stuck all 4 of them under his tongue. He tried to run away, but hardly had he taken a step when he felt his arms grasped and heard 2 horrible, deep voices say to him,
"Your money or your life."
On account of the gold pieces in his mouth, Pinocchio could not say a word, so he tried with head and hands and body to show, as best as he could, that he was only a poor marionette without a penny in his pocket.
"Come, come, less nonsense and out with your money,"
cried the 2 thieves in threatening voices. Once more Pinocchio's head and hands said, "I haven't a penny."
"Out with that money or you're a dead man,"
said the taller of the 2 assassins.
Dead man,
repeated the other.
"And after having killed you, we will kill your father also."
your father also.
"No, no, no, not my father!"
cried Pinocchio, wild with terror. But as he screamed, the gold pieces tinkled together in his mouth.
"Ah, you rascal! So that's the game! You have the money hidden under your tongue. Out with it!"
But Pinocchio was as stubborn as ever.
"Are you deaf? Wait, young man, we'll get it from you in a twinkling."
One of them grabbed the marionette by the nose and the other by the chin, and they pulled him unmercifully from side to side in order to make him open his mouth. All was of no use. The marionette's lips might have been nailed together. They would not open. In desperation, the smaller of the 2 assassins pulled out a long knife from his pocket and tried to pry Pinocchio's mouth open with it. Quick as a flash, the marionette sank his teeth deep into the assassin's hand, bit it off, and spat it out. Fancy his surprise when he saw that it was not a hand, but a cat's paw. Encouraged by this first victory, he freed himself from the claws of his assailers and, leaping over the bushes along the road, ran swiftly across the fields. His pursuers were after him at once, like two dogs chasing a hare. After running 7 miles or so, Pinocchio was well nigh exhausted. Seeing himself lost, he climbed up a giant pine tree and sat there to see what he could see. The assassins tried to climb also, but they slipped and fell. Far from giving up the chase, this only spurred them on. They gathered a bundle of wood, piled it up at the foot of the pine, and set fire to it. In a twinkling, the tree began to sputter and burn like a candle blown by the wind. Pinocchio saw the flames climb higher and higher. Not wishing to end his days as a roasted marionette, he jumped quickly to the ground and off he went, the assassins close to him as before. Dawn was breaking when, without any warning whatsoever, Pinocchio found his path barred by a deep pool full of water the color of muddy coffee. What was there to do? With a 1, 2, 3, he jumped clear across it. The assassins jumped also, but not having measured their distance well, splash! They fell right into the middle of the pool. Pinocchio, who heard the splash and felt it too, cried out laughing, but never stopping in his race, "A pleasant bath to you, signori!" He thought they must surely be drowned and turned his head to see. But there were the two somber figures still following him, though their black sacks were drenched and dripping with water. As he ran, the marionette felt more and more certain that he would have to give himself up into the hands of his pursuers. Suddenly, he saw a little cottage gleaming white as the snow among the trees of the forest. "If I have enough breath left with which to reach that little house, I may be saved," he said to himself. Not waiting another moment, he darted swiftly through the woods, the assassins still after him. After a hard race of almost an hour, tired and out of breath, Pinocchio finally reached the door of the cottage and knocked. No one answered. He knocked again, harder than before, for behind him he heard the steps and the labored breathing of his persecutors. The same silence followed. As knocking was of no use, Pinocchio, in despair, began to kick and bang against the door, as if he wanted to break it. At the noise, a window opened and a lovely maiden looked out. She had azure hair and a face white as wax. Her eyes were closed and her hands crossed on her breast. With a voice so weak that it could hardly be heard, she whispered, "No one lives in this house. Everyone is dead." "Won't you at least open the door for me?" cried Pinocchio in a beseeching voice. "I also am dead." "Dead? What are you doing at the window then?" "I am waiting for the coffin to take me away." After these words, the little girl disappeared, and the window closed without a sound. "Oh, lovely maiden with azure hair!" cried Pinocchio. "Open, I beg of you! Take pity on a poor boy who is being chased by two assassins." He did not finish, for two powerful hands grasped him by the neck, and the same two horrible voices growled threateningly, "Now we have you!" The marionette, seeing death dancing before him, trembled so hard that the joints of his legs rattled and the coins tinkled under his tongue. "Well," the assassins asked, "will you open your mouth now or not?" "Ah, you do not answer. Very well, this time you shall open it." Taking out two long, sharp knives, they struck two heavy blows on the marionette's back. Happily for him, Pinocchio was made of very hard wood, and the knives broke into 1,000 pieces. The assassins looked at each other in dismay, holding the handles of the knives in their hands. "I understand," said one of them to the other. "There is nothing left to do now but to hang him." "To hang him," repeated the other. They tied Pinocchio's hands behind his shoulders and slipped the noose around his neck. Throwing the rope over the high limb of a giant oak tree, they pulled till the poor marionette hung far up in space. Satisfied with their work, they sat on the grass, waiting for Pinocchio to give his last gasp. But after 3 hours, the marionette's eyes were still open, his mouth still shut, and his legs kicked harder than ever. Tired of waiting, the assassins called to him mockingly,
Goodbye till tomorrow. When we return in the morning, we hope you'll be polite enough to let us find you dead and gone, and with your mouth wide open.
With these words, they went. A few minutes went by, and then a wild wind started to blow. As it shrieked and moaned, the poor little sufferer was blown to and fro like the hammer of a bell. The rocking made him seasick, and the noose, becoming tighter and tighter, choked him. Little by little, a film covered his eyes. Death was creeping nearer and nearer, and the marionette still hoped for some good soul to come to his rescue, but no one appeared. As he was about to die, he thought of his poor old father, and hardly conscious of what he was saying, murmured to himself, "Oh, Father, dear Father, if you were only here." These were his last words. He closed his eyes, opened his mouth, stretched out his legs, and hung there as if he were dead. End of chapter.